Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Sponsored by Game Time. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. The 53-man roster is set. We've got crazy takes about Caleb Williams from Ryan Clark that we'll discuss, some concerns on defense that I have, and we're going to, have a little fun at the end of the show of who we would ban from Soldier Field, like what's happening in college football right now. Joe George, Lauren Cox here with you today. So, Lauren, today's cutdown day. It's one of those where news is trickling out through the day, and we'll go through the offense and the defense. But your biggest surprise or shock, either on the roster or off the roster, I would say.
Yeah, I think individually, I guess bigger picture, it's where they decided to keep more depth and not, right? Really keeping 10 offensive linemen and 10 defensive linemen there and trying to just kind of load up in the trenches there. Maybe shouldn't be a huge shock, but it's just something we've been kind of keeping an eye on. But as far as individual players go, it's defensive end Tano Passanio being released was kind of the big surprise for me. He was a veteran they signed at the start of training camp who had played for Dennis Allen in the Saints defense before. Kind of their veteran quote unquote solution to not a lot of proven pass rush productivity. And throughout the preseason, they didn't use him that much. It kind of signaled like this is a guy who felt like they were safe because they just kind of sprinkled him in here and there to get him some reps, but kind of treated him almost like a borderline starter. So I was surprised to see him go and would not be surprised if he's back on the 53-man roster before week one actually starts.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think for me, it's not a surprise. It's finally here. It's a guy that we've discussed a couple times, and we'll get right into the defense because mine's going to be on the defensive side as well. It's going to be Zach Pickens. The fact that this is a move that the Bears went out and they drafted him pretty early on, and he just never really developed into the player that people thought. This is the graphic that Lauren put together for the guys who made the roster. So Pickens on defense is the one for me that I was like, well, it was not a surprise, but it felt inevitable. But I was still a little shocked in a way that it actually happened.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of changing of the guard type of roster moves here where it's a Ryan Poles draft pick, so it's not a new GM, but it is a new coaching staff that wasn't involved in drafting Zach Pickens. And we can throw wide receiver Tyler Scott right here in this same conversation as far as guys that you would imagine that the Matt Eberflus regime was probably the staff that wanted Zach Pickens. Part of why they drafted Zach Pickens, they saw a role for him in that defense. And Tyler Scott would have been a part of, would that have been Luke Getsy's offense, I think, when Tyler Scott was drafted? It was those coaches and same scouts, but at least the coaches, you draft players envisioning them in the system that's present at the time. And then when that system changes, well, maybe some players aren't going to be as good of a fit. And really in both of their cases, they never really showcased that talent. We didn't see them really get better from their rookie year to where they are now.
Yeah, it just there wasn't that development. Something we've talked about a couple times. It's not just the development of the guys that are currently on the roster. It's the guys that Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen have inherited of what can they do with them in just one offseason to impress. So it's not too shocking. Typically I feel like when we see cuts like this, more often than not, it's also a GM change has also taken place. But I think it goes back to Ben Johnson has real control over this roster. That, Ryan Poles is not just allowed to stick to his guys that he wants here, that he drafted, that he believed in at one point. Ben's able to come in here and to the Bears and really implement what he believes are the right pieces for this roster. And I think Scott and Pickens are really the perfect example of that.
And I think the flip side for both of those guys, it's not always one-to-one at their respective positions, but out with the old, in with the new. An undrafted free agent like Ja'Day Walker comes in and not only shines on offense, but really outplays Tyler Scott on special teams to get that sixth wide receiver spot. And I look even at the linebacker position. Someone like Carl Jones is a former undrafted free agent, sticks on this 53. I know he didn't directly unseat a quote unquote veteran. They put Amon Onwabamiga on injured reserve, but still new opportunity for guys to stick that maybe under the previous regime wouldn't have had the same opportunities or wouldn't have had, the same sort of fit in what the coaching staff is asking them to do. And here they are living out their NFL dreams.
Yeah, Walker was one that I think we don't learn everything from social media, right? But if you do look at X and Bears fans, there's a lot of hype for Walker as like this guy deserves to be on the roster. And I agree. I thought he played well enough to earn it. My question was, are they going to keep 6 wide receivers? We see teams, they always handle it in different ways. We've seen Ben Johnson's teams in the past. I think we went through it 2 weeks ago. He's had 5 wide receivers, 6 wide receivers. We've seen teams keep 7 because of concerns and how they're going to utilize these guys. But the Bears keep a 6th one. It's Walker. I think it's the right move. Like, it's nothing against Scott. And I think he'll have a shot to make a roster elsewhere, as we'll see a bunch of guys get claimed now after these moves come out. But I think that specific one there for Walker over Scott was definitely the right decision, even though it's not like a huge impact on this roster, just to be honest.
Yeah, I wondered how they would approach that decision in particular, in terms of like, do you just keep Walker on the 53 because he's the better player? Which I think we can all agree, like, he had the better preseason, was the better player, outplayed Tyler Scott. But I wondered if they would take a more of a I don't know if a greedy approach is the way to describe it, but to ask themselves and say, I think they could still land Ja'Day Walker on the practice squad if they wanted. If they had released him, I don't think he would get claimed right to a 53-man roster. And so they could have potentially kept both Tyler Scott and Ja'Day Walker by keeping Scott on the 53 and Walker on the practice squad. But by letting Tyler Scott go, I think there's more of a chance that he ends up on another NFL roster and not back up on the practice squad than Walker, who had a great preseason. But we don't see very often teams just nab an undrafted free agent who had a good preseason, put him right on their 53 without having really seen them in regular season action. It's not out of the question, but I have pretty good confidence that Walker would have made it to the practice squad, and they could have kept both had they wanted to, but clearly they didn't.
One of the big news items that for the Bears started earlier in the day today was that Jalen Johnson was going to be taken off the NFI list, and if he was still on it, he'd be ineligible to play for the first 4 games of the season. They take him off. At the moment, there's no injury dezonation. They didn't guarantee he was going to be available for week 1, but I think, pulling back up this graphic here, when you look at the cornerbacks that are on this roster now, if you look outside of Jalen Johnson, you have Kyler Gordon, who's has some injuries himself. We have Tyreek Stevenson, Nashawn Wright, Josh Blackwell, and Nick McLeod. Now with the Johnson news, Lauren, how do you feel about the cornerback room and the moves that were made there?
Yeah, I mean, we heard Ben Johnson today say he couldn't definitively say whether Jalen Johnson will play week 1 or not. And I get that that's still basically 2 full weeks away when it's all said and done by the time we get to Monday night on that game. So I don't want to panic just yet, but I've felt all along that clearly not injured enough to go on short-term injured reserve. So he's going to be out fewer than 4 games. Otherwise they could have put him in one of those spots instead of Eamon Ogbagamiga or Travis Homer. But I'm still not totally confident that he's ready to go and plays in week 1 just yet. I will say, though, keeping Nick McLeod as the number 6 cornerback and not Trey Flowers or somebody else, to me, says more about Josh Blackwell's injury and maybe even Kyler Gordon's injury. Like, Nick McLeod was the primary slot corner on the depth chart in those guys' plays. Blackwell didn't play the last 2 preseason games, and McLeod basically started both those games because Gordon didn't play either. So to me, McLeod sticking around is more about what they want to do in the slot. And maybe because Kyler Gordon's going to play some safety in some different roles too, they wanted to have another slot guy they really liked. And is therefore a positive signal that they didn't feel the need to keep an outside cornerback, anticipating that Jalen Johnson might not be ready.
Yeah, and we know how this works too. I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys who make the roster today as we're doing this show, and potentially if you're listening to this show on Thursday because you're catching up, some of these guys might not be on the roster. Like, we do see, when the waiver wire starts to come through, more roster moves get made. But I'm with you. I think if anything, it just gives hope that Jalen Johnson will return quickly. I mean, obviously everyone wants him back for week 1 to play against Justin Jefferson and the Vikings, but it's such a positive sign for the long term that both him and Kyler Gordon could have been potentially on this list too, and the NFI list, and been kept out the first 4 weeks. So the fact that neither of them are on it is really the best news of the day for the Bears.
Yeah, I think those are, and the fact that they didn't keep any additional running backs besides the 4, and they put Travis Homer on injured reserve. So, and we'll talk about the running backs in a little bit, but from a roster building standpoint, that also to me feels like a little bit of a signal of hey, there weren't any injury panics as far as corresponding moves anywhere yet. We should say yet on this 53-man roster, but I was surprised that the two players they did choose to put on IR were Travis Homer and Eamon Nagbagmiga. I wondered if, say, Austin Booker might have ended up on there because he was supposed to be week to week with the injury. We wondered about Johnson or Kyler Gordon or even Case Keenum. We didn't see the last 2 preseason games. I thought they might try and stash Case Keenum on IR so he could still be around the team all season and be that voice for Caleb Williams without having to count as a 53-man roster spot. But I guess they're rolling with him as an actual part of this roster, and I can't blame him. That was the whole reason they brought him in.
Yeah, let's look at the offense here. So these are the players that made the 53-man roster. You look at the running back room, DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Common Dungai, and then Travis Homer on the IR. But what's interesting, Lauren, is, if you look at all the Bears reporters who were at practice today, only DeAndre Swift was there. He was the only running back at practice. So while they could have found a way to kept Homer, we'll see what happens with the waiver wire. It feels like running back is a position of need through the waiver wire. I am biased. I have no problem saying that. I have my eyes squarely on Audric Estime. I loved him at Notre Dame. I think there's some juice there still. I mean, he just got drafted last year by the Broncos. So I think they're going to have to add to the running back room unless this is the biggest misdirection ever with only Swift at practice, with a week or so plus before the game.
Yeah, I mean, it could just signal a certain level of comfort of saying, hey, we do feel good about Monangai and Roshan Johnson with healthy. I mean, we haven't seen Roshan Johnson for a month, it feels like.
Yeah.
So it does feel like something's got to happen there just because Homer's on, Homer being on IR is kind of the big one here. If they had all 4 guys and none of them were practicing, or that Swift was the only one practicing, at least you feel like, well, one of those 3 guys, a couple of those 3 guys should be healthy. But this does feel like a little bit of I guess it's not a smoking gun because the gun hasn't been fired yet, but certainly foretelling where additional moves are going to be made here. They've had all offseason and all training camp to make a big addition at running back. They worked out Jamal Williams and didn't sign him. I mean, Royce Freeman was kind of the splashiest of the signings, and he lasted a week before roster cutdown day. So it just would seem strange to me that all this time they haven't made a big running back addition. Well, these players have been dealing with the same injuries the whole time, but now that we're closer, now that we're closer to week 1, they have less time to prepare a new running back. Are they going to make a new big splash now? I don't think anything's changed since those guys first got hurt. So why, if you were concerned about the injuries all along, then why not get the new face in earlier? So that I don't, unless there just wasn't an option out there. But now a better running back is waived or cut, and then now or available for a trade or whatever. And so now you got to take the bird in the hand when you didn't like your options before. That's the only explanation I can be comfortable with as logical.
Yeah, and if you're going to add at running back or something like that, someone has to come off the 53-man roster. And when you look at this offensive the guys who made the depth chart or who made the team, that's 10 offensive linemen, Lauren. I mean, that is a full starting and reserve unit. Both Kieran and Theo Benedict both make the roster here. Luke Newman, Ozzie Trapillo, they're all out here on this roster. I mean, obviously Ozzie was going to make it, but 10 guys on the roster at the offensive line position going into the season. That's a fifth of your 53-man roster, essentially.
And I was looking back at some previous Ben Johnson 53-man rosters in Detroit, and that wasn't super uncommon for him. It was only for the last 3 years, so it's a small sample size with him as offensive coordinator. But, last year in the Lions' first 53, they kept 10, and they kept 9 one of the years before that. So it's not – it's clearly something that Ben Johnson's previous teams have valued up front, and maybe they feel like – there's still more moves to be made there, because Ben Johnson was asked on Tuesday as we're streaming this live and it comes out in recording, if Braxton Jones is going to be the starting left tackle for week 1, and we still didn't necessarily get a strong positive confirmation that maybe an outside player could still be a part of that mix, or maybe they start Braxton Jones for now for week 1, but then from there it's kind of a potential revolving door there. Something still feels a little bit unsettled about this offensive line so far. And so if I'm, say, Theo Benedict or Karana Magaji, I'm not necessarily, taking out a mortgage on the house just yet. Let's wait and see how the next few days go.
And that's always just, writer suggestions and things like that. But it does feel like all of a sudden I pull up my tab and all these sports stories populate to it. And it's 3 or 4 Braxton Jones trade suggestions to trade him for a cornerback. Is that something you, in your mind, would entertain at this point? Because my initial reaction is no, because no one has won the left tackle job. Again, Ben Johnson said he's not willing to talk about the starting offensive line just yet. That's kind of concerning that he's not just yes, this is our left tackle.
if he's not good enough to be the clear-cut starter here, then is another team going to see him good enough to be a starter worth trading for? Like, yeah, it would be different if like Ozzy Trapillo had been great all preseason, but Braxton Jones was just better, so you keep Braxton Jones. But when it feels like none of your left tackles have been particularly consistent enough, as much as I'm not thrilled with Braxton Jones, he's still the best of your bad choices. So like you're not gonna trade your best option there. Like I would more entertain like trading like Karan Amagaji, or no one's gonna trade for Theo Bennett, but like maybe one of those kind of players. But like with Braxton Jones, until you have an alternative, you gotta just roll with him, and because he's the best you got.
Pulling up the defense back here real quick. Question here in the chat. Let's see if this works. Irv says, how does Tom Robinson keep sneaking in? He adds little to nothing. Dominique Robinson was one of those guys for me, Lauren, that I was unsure of how they were going to handle that in terms of making the roster. He's there. I mean, you have Austin Booker, Daniel Hardy, obviously Dio's there, who we'll talk about later in the show. You have quite a few defensive linemen as well on this roster. Were you surprised that Dominique Robinson made it?
Only insofar as that Tano Passanio did not make it, that he made it over Tano. Like it wouldn't have floored me if Robinson was on the 53, like and Daniel Hardy wasn't. Like it wasn't like I thought I was stunned he made it. It was just a matter of like how and where and in what order he made it. And I think to answer the question, Dominique Robinson can play and does play on the kickoff coverage team. He does play on the kickoff return team as a blocker, and then he has done some of the punt coverage team as well. So I think while he hasn't developed as a pass rusher the way that any of us would like to see, I do think that we heard Dennis Allen talk about him still learning the position. I think there's a feeling from this coaching staff that they can still mold him into something more. But then in the meantime, he can be a more valuable special teams player than your average defensive end that, like the bigger bodied guys aren't necessarily able to run on special teams that same way, but Robinson and Hardy can kind of be almost like linebackers on special teams. And there's Richard Hightower gets him on the roster, probably more so than Dennis Allen.
Yeah, and I think it's today's practice for the most part. It was almost all Richard Hightower's practice. It sounds like it was a heavy special teams practice. And you look at some of these moves that we've talked about: Walker making the team, Robinson making the team, Carl Jones making the team. These are special teams, focused moves at this point. It's not about who's going to contribute the most on offense and defense. It's about who's going to contribute the most on special teams. That's the bottom of your 53-man roster. Again, outside of that, it's the 10-man field, the 10-man offensive line still. I just didn't think they'd keep 10. I thought it would just be a lesser number than that.
Yeah, it's tricky because, guys like Luke Newman played so well on the interior and secured himself a spot. Absolutely. And then when you've invested 2 day 2 draft picks and offensive tackles in each of the last 2 years, you're not going to get rid of either of them that quickly. So then if Theo Bennett plays better than maybe both of those guys in some sense and advanced past both of them in the competition, you got to keep him as someone that's maybe a borderline starting caliber tackle. So I think they kind of got caught in between a rock and hard place, and it's a consequence of maybe how bad the offensive line is that they felt the need to keep 5 offensive tackles. Plus, Brian Poles has talked about Benedict potentially playing some guard, and Karan has played some guard in college, so he has that potential flexibility. But I was surprised we never really saw any of that during the preseason games this year.
Yeah, it's interesting just as the season goes, like injuries happen. What is it? How does the shakeup happen? Because we know guys are going to get hurt, right? There's going to be offensive linemen that miss games. So the Bears have given themselves some flexibility. It doesn't mean it's good flexibility, but there's flexibility nonetheless on the roster. All right, we'll take our first break of the show. If you guys have any questions or comments, you can drop them here in the YouTube chat. We'll get back to any roster decisions you guys have in the questions there. But look, I know guys on ESPN are paid to a lot of money, Lauren, to make hot takes, but I heard a take today about Caleb Williams that we could not ignore. We'll get into that next year on the Bear Squad show. Today's show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is literally right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. So if you haven't joined a league, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league. Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. The season kickoff on September 4th. Now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. If you want more ways to play, you can try brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. If you want to play instantly with friends, you can try the new Draft with Friends mode. And if you prefer the classics, get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. And no crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. It's time to draft. Preseason's over. Now you can start doing your fantasy football drafts. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. Also want to talk to you guys about this. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. All right, so I was flipping through Twitter this morning, Lauren, and all of a sudden I see Ryan Clark's talking about Caleb Williams. And the quote he had today was, if Caleb Williams doesn't play well, he's going to get the Anthony Richardson treatment, suggesting that, and he went into detail about how if Caleb's not good this year, the Bears and Ben Johnson will bring in a veteran quarterback to compete with Caleb Williams next year for the starting job. And then he glowed eloquently about how Caleb Williams would succeed elsewhere if it doesn't work out here. So I was a little confused, honestly, because it's like, if you think he's going to play elsewhere, like, why are you even suggesting this? Your initial thoughts when you hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, first of all, I try not to ever get too caught up in what people on television are saying about sports teams, because it's more about the attention than the merit of the argument. But bigger picture than that, I mean, I think it depends how you want to define the Anthony Richardson treatment there, because there was very clearly like, we have no confidence in Anthony Richardson was the approach from the Colts. And I think if Caleb has a bad year from the Bears, there will be a lot of pressure on him, but I don't think it's going to be as, white flag waving as it kind of felt like the Colts did this offseason. Like, I think if anything, right, the competition for Caleb Williams is probably already on the roster in Tyson agent. Like, I just don't see Ben Johnson. Like, they're not going to go out and spend a bunch of money on a veteran quarterback, like, unless like something goes horribly wrong in Detroit and they move on from Jared Goff for some reason, or like that, like a pie in the sky, crazy something happens that is impossible to predict and very unlikely, like something like that, where Ben Johnson would just sort of feel like, oh, well, this is a great opportunity to have them both push each other. But even that feels really, really unlikely and not worth giving a lot of time or energy or attention to. Like, it would have to be like, even if like Caleb Williams had the same injury questions that Anthony Richardson, it still wouldn't be the same conversation, because we just haven't seen Caleb be nearly as bad or inconsistent. He hasn't been great, but like, the big difference between what we've seen from Richardson and what we've seen from Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just their stats just last year, just to compare and contrast here. Caleb Williams, 3,500 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, 88 passer rating, and completed 62.5% of his passes. Anthony Richardson threw for 1,800 yards, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 61 QB rating, 47% completion percentage. Those are drastically different quarterbacks. And I think there's some nuance too, where like, if Caleb Williams ever did what Anthony Richardson did, I will say already, I'm out. When Anthony Richardson tapped his helmet last year and asked to be taken out of a football game, it was one of the most shocking things I've ever seen an NFL player do. And if I saw a player on the Bears do that because he was tired, I think I would it doesn't matter who it is. Like, any player, it could be Sweat, it could be Caleb, it could be a Dunze. Like, if I ever saw that, I'm out. But I think the idea that Caleb could play bad enough to where they would want to bring in external competition is really far-fetched. I think you're right. If it doesn't go well, the competition's on the roster. It's Tyson.
And I think the big difference between Caleb and Richardson's situation isn't even necessarily, I mean, it is the quarterbacks, but bigger than that is the situation of each coaching staff. Like, I think the Anthony Richardson treatment came in part because Shane Steichen and company are feeling the heat. Like, I don't want, we can debate on exactly how hot their seats are, but there's a feeling like if things go really poorly this year in Indianapolis, that they could be canned, and especially now with Richardson struggling, like that, so that there was some motivation to bring in Daniel Jones there not just because they need to upgrade the quarterback position, but because they need to save their jobs as a coaching staff. And even if Caleb Williams plays very poorly this season, Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen will not be anywhere close to any kind of hot seat entering next season. Like they get a couple of years automatically of grace of trying to turn some things around. And then we can start to talk about, do they feel the pressure to need to do something drastic there? But I think they've got the patience. And I think Caleb Williams will have earned that patience to say, there'll be a lot of pressure, but not like an immediate veteran competition. Like Andy Dalton's not coming in to push him the way that he did for Justin Fields in years. Was that year 3 for Fields as well?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was year 3. I just struggle with the idea of that could go that poorly. It's more just now, is he Ben Johnson's cup of tea? We'll see. Like that to me would be, it's maybe not even about the play on the field. It's the behind the scenes stuff. We'll talk about what we saw in the last preseason game in the next segment, but like, are there operational things that where Ben Johnson's just like, this guy's not it? Now, I will say he's given us nothing to really earn this trust from me, Lauren, but like, I trust Ben Johnson in full. So if we did get to the end of the season and Ben Johnson's like, that's not my guy, I'd be like, okay, like what do you want your guy to be? I would go for it, but I just struggle with the idea that someone could even think that this is like realistically a thing that could happen this season. It's way more going into year 4 that I think this would become a real conversation.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that point there about Ben Johnson. And like he said repeatedly, he took this Chicago Bears job to work with Caleb Williams. Like, I just find it really hard to envision a scenario where after a year, he's like, oh, I was wrong. Like, I don't want to work with that guy. Screw that. That was not what I wanted to see at all. Like, I could see, maybe eventually down the line, like you said, like your 4 of Caleb Williams is maybe a different conversation at that point. But like for now, that was like the appeal. That was the whole draw to get Ben Johnson here. So Johnson's not going to bail. Like if anything, it becomes a pretty negative reflection on Ben Johnson as well. If he's not able to not make Caleb, you don't have to make Caleb Williams into a MVP, but like if things go really badly with Caleb Williams, we're going to be pointing to the coaching staff just as much as the court. I mean, how you split the blame there depends on how the season goes, but like if Caleb Williams struggles, we'll say, wow, Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles didn't do their jobs in addition to Caleb not being good enough.
You mentioned Ryan Poles there. One thing I forgot to mention while we were going over the 53-man roster, and again, if you guys have any questions in the YouTube here, you want to drop them in here in the comment section, you're more than welcome to. We'll get to them right away. But with Pickens and Scott being 2 of the guys who didn't make the roster here, I do expect there to be some angst amongst Bears fans of like, Ryan Poles just got a contract extension, and these are his guys that the Bears are moving on from. So I do feel like today is a little bit of a poor reflection on Ryan Poles. It's not nail in the coffin or anything like that, but it does just raise my eyebrows. Like these are guys that he believed in, going back to like him, then like Velus Jones and guys he was just flat out wrong about.
Yeah, and I go back and forth on this because like obviously bad to not hit on these draft picks, but also we are talking about 3rd and 4th round picks here, right? Like this is not good. And I'm not here to like, I'm not trying to be a Ryan Poles defender here per se, but I just think big picture across the NFL, a lot of teams miss on 3rd and 4th round picks. Now Ryan Poles has missed on all of them, and that's bad, right? But we shouldn't expect that like, oh, all of these guys were all supposed to pan out and all be great players. Like his hit rate needs to be higher. He is below expectations for his 3rd and 4th round picks. But in the totality of his ability to draft in the 1st and 2nd rounds, like that's what's more important. The earlier the pick, obviously, the more important the player's success will be to the team. And like he's hit on Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker, and for now it seems like Jervon Dexter and maybe Tyreek Stevenson, but then Darnell Wright, Roma Dunze, Caleb seems to be on the right track. Colson Love and Luther Burden are, it's way too early, but he's the most important picks are the ones that he is moderately successful with at worst, if not greatly successful with. And so he does need to be better in those other rounds, but it just means he's not an elite GM, but doesn't make him a horrible GM because he's missed on some day 2 draft picks there. Like I think at the end of the day, Ryan Poles is probably an average NFL GM. You can do worse, but you can certainly do better. And eventually we decide whether that's good enough or not.
Yeah, and like it's it's just as news is trickling out here across the NFL as we're doing this show live, a great counter to that is like this isn't now while Bill Belichick's no longer in New England, the Patriots just waived Cole Strange, who that was a wild pick when it happened. Everyone was shocked when the Patriots reached on that move, and he's now been released and was a first-round pick 3 years ago for them. Like, that's what should get people irate. It's just people are going to always find something to pick on, and I just feel like seeing Scott and Pickens specifically cut today are the ones that are going to probably just stand out the most, because it's also people that a lot of fans are probably just the most familiar with, honestly.
And along the same lines of doing this live and getting live updates, Ryan Poles was doing his press conference as we're doing this live, and he had a quote about the running backs situation with Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monangai in particular. He said, quote, "Feel good about their timelines. The next few days, you'll see the practice field look a little different." So there seems to be some real positivity that, hey, yes, they're hurt right now, and it was weird having just DeAndre Swift on Tuesday, but he indicated that perhaps even by the end of the week, guys like Monangai and Roschon Johnson will be back in practice in more of a full capacity, and then in theory be ready to go for week 1. So maybe we won't see a panic move in the backfield.
That's good, because it's hard not to just like see pictures and videos at camp, and it's like DeAndre Swift's the only guy out there, and it's like, yeah, DJ Moore is taking some snaps at running back, but that can't be your arsenal going into week 1. So that's a very positive update. I still feel like I don't know, fantasy, like I've been going like late rounds on Monangai as like a late stash guy, maybe after I take my kicker even. So like literally using my last pick in the draft on him, just kind of, if someone's going to break out for the Bears and I'm going to be a homer, like maybe that's the guy I'm going for, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think there's some real upside there, especially as, you know, as we've seen Ben Johnson use multiple running backs in the past with Detroit, that it's not going to just be the DeAndre Swift show this season. And certainly their past relationship suggests that we'll see how that goes as the year goes on. But Ben Johnson has been very complimentary of Swift I think in a very intentional way to try and downplay any of that past stuff and really say we're all in on Swift, but they're also going to have other guys involved. And it feels like if anybody's going to be helping Swift, it's going to be Monangai and not Roschon.
Yeah. Let's see. Matt says here in the chat, so when is it time to stop to worry about Poles' record with drafting? If this season goes by and none of his picks make the Pro Bowl, that will be in 4 years of none of his picks making the Pro Bowl. That's damning, in my opinion. I think if you use like Pro Bowl as a standard, I think that's a totally fair point. I do think there are guys that Ryan Poles has drafted, though, that I would quantify as Pro Bowl caliber players, like specifically like a Kyler Gordon, right? Where like he can be a Pro Bowl guy. Caleb Williams can be a Pro Bowl guy. You acquired DJ Moore, so even though it's not a draft, like that was a draft move in which you acquired him. Rome Odunze's got that potential. So I think the guys are there in place that could do it. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's probably more about Ben Johnson putting them in the right position, unlike Matt Eberflus in that era of Bears football.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's a little bit early to judge 2 of those 4 draft classes as like the Pro Bowl might not be. How many first and second year players make the Pro Bowl every year? A couple, but it's really, really rare. So like, I think we can start to look at his first draft class of Gordon, Brisker, Velus Jones, Braxton Jones, Dominic Robinson, etc., and say like, yeah, you'd like to see Gordon or Brisker be healthy and be a Pro Bowl caliber player out of that class. You'd like to see Darnell Wright start to approach Pro Bowl caliber offensive line play, but like Caleb and Rome Odunze last year and the rookies this year, like I don't know that I can expect in year 1 or year 2 those guys to instantly be Pro Bowl caliber players. Like it's such a rare thing that I'm willing to have a little bit more patience with those guys than holding Pro Bowl to that standard right away.
I will say, I think if Caleb throws for 4,000 yards this year, he's going to be a Pro Bowler. Like mainly because the NFC's weak. It's like you got Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and like who's the next best guy? Is it Dak? Is it Jared Goff? Jordan Love? Like who's the next quarterback? It's not like the AFC where there's entire divisions that have better quarterbacks than the NFC. So I do think it's possible. And honestly, I hope Caleb Williams is a Pro Bowler this year. Like if he throws for 4,000 yards, I think he'll be there.
I'm old enough to remember Pro Bowl quarterback Mitch Trubisky back in 2018, as well as what I think Tariq Cohen made the Pro Bowl, Cody Whitehair made the Pro Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Like not necessarily players who we would they're literally Pro Bowl caliber, but like in terms of talent that we've seen over the course of their careers, we're never really Pro Bowl caliber players. Like sometimes the Pro Bowl in that regard is a reflection of like how good your team is rather than how good the individual talent is. Because like Jalen Johnson should have been a Pro Bowler long before he made his first Pro Bowl in the last couple of seasons, but it just takes kind of a while for that to really, sink in the eyes of the national voting populace. And when your team's not very good, they don't see them very much on national television. They think the players must not be very good. And to be fair, the Bears haven't been very good either. But that becomes more of a tricky measuring stick for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also want them to be real Pro Bowlers though, like not like the seventh alternate. Like who's the guy who just got cut by the Browns? Tyler Huntley. Like he wasn't a real Pro Bowler. You don't get credit for that either. I mean, to be fair, I think I have this right. So I was born in '92. I think Mitch Trubisky is the only Bears quarterback Pro Bowler of my lifetime. I don't think Cutler got one. So yeah, Mitch Trubisky is the only one. So low bar, Caleb Williams to pass those guys.
To be fair, Jay Cutler got the Pro Bowl in Denver before the Bears traded for him. So the Chicago Bears quarterback had made the Pro Bowl before, but just not well
as a Bear. Yeah, well, there might be a couple. I mean, you never know. Like Kyle Orton might have a Pro Bowl outside of Chicago. There's probably a couple of guys that were once or in Chicago that were good elsewhere. All right, we'll take our break here. Let's look back at the last preseason game. We didn't do a post-game show for this one. We'll be here with you after every single game going forward, including late night, Monday Night Football, reacting with you for an hour here on the Bears, Locked On Bears YouTube channel to everything that we see, Bears versus Vikings. But what did we see in the final preseason game? We'll get into that next year on the Bears Squad Show.
This Bears Squad Show stream is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. And today is FanDuel Futures Day. One day only. FanDuel is giving you access to all of the best deals on prop bets over the course of this upcoming season. It's whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing long shot division winners, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. It's FanDuel's Future Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. So if you want to look at Caleb Williams' long shot MVP odds, you're getting a boost today for FanDuel Futures Day. Also, Ben Johnson as Coach of the Year. The Bears are fourth in odds for the NFC North as well. If you want to put that in, it's all part of this 24-hour only FanDuel Futures Day holiday. So visit the FanDuel app today and start getting your futures bet in now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only with FanDuel. Play your game.
All right, so this last preseason game wasn't as clean from the offense. Let's start there. Ben Johnson also, he wasn't thrilled. So what'd you make of the offensive performance in that final game in which we didn't even really want to see the starters in, Barn?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first of all, it was how long they stayed on the field, and that was a reflection of Ben Johnson's lack of approval there. But I don't know. I found myself at first feeling like, wow, that was really bad and horrible and everything was going wrong. And then kind of watching it back through a second time, I came away less concerned. One, it's first drive, there's the fumble, and now you get a false start back to back. You got 2nd and 19. I'm not really going to panic about the offense failing to convert at that point. Okay, there was operational stuff, but from there, it's kind of the whole drive is screwed. But then the next 2 or 3 drives, they just kept running the ball over and over again. It was very clearly a different approach than what they came out with against the Bills the first time the starters played, the second preseason game, when they were pass, Caleb in rhythm, on time, getting things going. They very clearly wanted to get the offensive line run blocking a bit more and get DeAndre Swift some run, literal run in the running game there. And so it felt to me more like a game that was about Ben Johnson wanting to call stuff that he wanted to see, as opposed to calling stuff that was designed to put you in the best position to beat the Kansas City Chiefs and score the most points possible. He can still be disappointed that, hey, they didn't execute the things I was asking them to do well enough. But it wasn't he couldn't find the right things for them to do to win the game. It wasn't oh, he's throwing all of his best stuff at the Chiefs and the Bears got nothing. It's no, he's running the ball and just kind of stretching out that part of the offense. And then they're struggling to get in a rhythm because they're not really throwing the ball all that much. And then, so from there, I find myself, not to say that nothing to worry about, don't just ignore the game. No, not that, but also sky is not falling. That wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah. In a weird, I do think it was kind of a needed, cold water thrown on your face after the previous week to just okay, it's not going to be perfect. And I think that's what, I think the 2 preseason games is a reflection of what early on in the season really could look like for the Bears. Specifically, week 1, you're playing Brian Flores, one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, in week 1 on Monday Night Football. the intent, like the pressure is going to be high, and they're going to be throwing a lot of stuff at you that Caleb Williams is not ready for, and they're going to have to adjust mid game. So it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be clean. So I think Ben Johnson's frustration, like you hear it. I mean, what did he say? It was, if we play like that, we're not going to be very good this season. I agree. I appreciate the honesty, like, because like most coaches don't talk like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like there's no sugarcoating it there, and I appreciated that, because even it seems like in the Eberflus era, like it just didn't feel as like genuine when he was like, yeah, we got to be better. It's like, well, what are you doing to get better? You know, he just kept saying we got to execute better, we got to, but like Ben has always consistently now been more particular and more specific about like, yeah, like operations got to be smoother there. Like the timing was off on the handoff on that first play, like, or like Caleb Williams held on to the ball too long in that play and took a sack. Like he's got to get through his progression a little bit quicker there, whatever, or the throw in the end zone that was almost intercepted. Like, yeah, we wanted to keep working through the progression there. He got caught up on the number 2 there with Rome Odunze or whatever it was. Like, I appreciate the specifics that like clearly aren't some sort of trade secrets that by putting it out there, the Vikings are going to have some intel on you that's going to cause them to give them some advantage for week 1. It's like, no, he can let us in behind the curtain a little bit, knowing that things are going to be so different in the regular season that there's nothing to hide at this point.
Yeah, and so the offense, I mean, obviously it wasn't great. Like I agree with you. When I rewatched it, I didn't feel as bad as it felt in the moment, and it's part of it's good too. Is I think it's just they know what they have to work on. We'll just see how it develops throughout the season. To be honest with you, my biggest concern is, and it's hard not to be look at one player and pick on him immensely, but because some of this is going to fall on the other guys on the offense, on the defensive line as well. But there was this play in which they showed this video on Twitter where they showed every single snap for Dio and in the Chiefs game, and it was brutal. I mean, it didn't look like he won a single rep out there in the preseason game. We haven't really heard him talked about in preseason, good or bad, which I think is worse because it means they're just neutral about you. But I feel like going to the season, I have very low expectations and expectations that we're going to be frustrated with this signing. I hope I'm wrong, but I do not feel good about him going into the season right now.
Yeah, I feel similarly, and he's been a signing that I was the most skeptical of from the start. But I'm also trying not to put too much stock in one game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, Dio Dengbo did not play in the first preseason game with none of the defensive starters did. In the second preseason game, he played 3 snaps, which were all the defensive starters played 3 snaps. So, and then he played 20 snaps against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was not a great 20 snaps, but he did get a quarterback hit in there and had some late pressures when the pocket kind of broke down and then he chased Mahomes out at that point. Like, I didn't think he individually was very good, but same was true for the rest of the defensive line that wasn't using Montez Sweat very much, didn't have the Grady Jarrett out there. Like it was a lot of like Dio Dengbo and Chris Williams and like guys that shouldn't be, like big time pass rushers for this defense going up against starting Chiefs offensive line that I think is also been much improved throughout the preseason. So I'm definitely skeptical about Dengbo and keeping a close eye on him, but I'm just sort of more concerned about the pass rush as a whole because they were double, triple team in Montez Sweat and other guys weren't getting nearly enough pressure that had one-on-ones like Odengbo, but also Gervon Dexter was really disappointing for me in that game. Chris Williams was underwhelming for me in that game. Like they need more on the pass rush than what they have right now, and that's a prime spot to add something to this 53-man roster.
Yeah, I think as you're talking it out there, I'm kind of even catching myself. It feels like it's the worriness of the entire defensive line. A lot of it's being placed on Odengbo, like that, because again, you brought him in, you paid him a good chunk of change, and then not see that production right away. He's going to get the blame when like you're right. There's other guys that the pass rush just doesn't look good. It's been the one thing that, so far through preseason, like outside of Austin Booker, but again, it's preseason. We'll see how it looks in the regular season. But in general, like I also just even before all of that didn't have like high levels of confidence that the Bears have game records. I think we all kind of know they don't at that position, and expecting Dio to be that for the Bears is also unrealistic. So that's another one where I would look at: is there trades or is there things that guys who get waived, probably pass rusher is probably the top priority. Since it sounds like the running backs are okay.
Yeah, it's just tricky because Odengbo gets, what, $16 million a year on his contract, one of the highest paid free agent edge rushers this offseason. Like that puts him certainly in the top 30 edge rushers. I have the list in front of me, but I can't count that fast. I think top 25 highest paid edge rushers in football. And so, like it feels like the dollars set an expectation that's different than what his career production would otherwise set as expectations. Like realistically, he has a similar career pass rush production as like DeMarcus Walker when the Bears signed him, right? Like one season of 8 sacks and the rest of the time it's like 3 or 5. Like that was about what DeMarcus Walker was when he came to the Bears, but he only got like $7.5 million a year, something along those lines. And so he was viewed as a disappointment even at that price tag. And so now Odengbo at more than double that price tag sets the expectation sky high. And I think they should be, and it will be a negative reflection on Ryan Poles if this player doesn't get back to at least being that 8-sack guy, let alone trying to approach double digits this season. Would be ideal if Montez Sweat's getting all the attention. Odengbo should have the much better matchups, more one-on-ones to just turn the corner and get after the QB, but we need to see that. And I just don't think the preseason sample size has been enough to say this is for sure bad, but it hasn't been as encouraging as we'd want it to be.
What if I'm going to give you a number here between the two of them, between Odengbo and Montez Sweat. If they have 17 sacks between the two of them, is that enough? So it's a 9, 10-7, something like that. Is that enough for this year?
There's different kinds of enough, right? I think,
yeah.
Is that good enough for this Bears defense to get by? Yes. Is it value that matches the contract and the salary the Bears are investing in them? No. And that's, but if they just need to be good enough to get by, like I think if you're paying Montez Sweat, what is it, $24.5 million a year, and Dio Dengbo 16, that's $40 million of your salary cap space into these two pass rushers. You should be getting more than 17 sacks out of $40 million of investment into pass rushers. But I do think that given what Dennis Allen does from a scheme standpoint, what they should be able to get from Jared and Dexter and some other guys rotating in there, like I think as a defense, they won't collapse if that's all they get from those two guys, but it will feel like they're still a little bit underwhelming based on the investment.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. We talked about Trey Hendrickson last week. He got a $14 million raise, makes him a 1-year, $30 million player for the Cincinnati Bengals. He got 17.5 sacks last year. So you're saying that $30 million player got 17 sacks. These two $40 million players combined are getting 17 sacks. Like there's a difference. It shows where the Bears are really lacking on this defense. It's really the biggest area they lack, I think, outside of offensive line on this entire roster.
Yeah, despite all the investments there, right? Jarrett signing, Odengbo signing, second-round pick on Dexter, second-round pick on Pickens. I guess you could throw in fifth-round pick on Austin Booker, second-round pick on Dexter, second-round pick on Turner, third-round pick on Pickens. Like they've put a lot in that position, and we haven't really seen. Plus, a second-round pick traded for Sweat. We haven't seen that really come to fruition consistently enough.
All right, we're gonna have some fun here at the end of the show. College football is back. We've got conflicting reports from Ohio State and Fox that Dave Portnoy was banned from going to Ohio State's stadium because he's a Michigan guy. Maybe other reasons, but he's a Michigan guy. So who was on your ban list? Who are we no longer allowing into Soldier Field? We'll get to that next, and you're welcome in the chat here on the Bear Squad Show. Aaron Rodgers is the number 1 pick?
He's got to be.
Not allowed in?
Undisputed persona non grata, public enemy number 1 has to be Aaron Rodgers at that point, right? I mean, I don't know who else is a larger antagonist to the Chicago Bears as a franchise. I mean, Lori Lightfoot. A little bit of a different reasons there, but like outside of that, like I don't know who else would be that kind of like enemy of the state in that way. I mean, that was the first name that jumped to mind for me too.
And I think there's a big gap between like for this list of Aaron Rodgers to Brett Favre. Like and Brett was a pain too, obviously, but like I think maybe it's a recency bias here, but I Bears fans, like that game versus the Steelers this year is gonna matter a lot because people want to see them destroy Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's especially just with the whole, owning you conversation, and he's still going to try to play that even as like not just the Packers owning him, but Rodgers specifically being the one to own him. The Favre thing is interesting because of all of the additional off-field stuff that has happened with Brett Favre since then. But I think the Favre thing is a little bit more of a recency bias thing. So I was just going back to look at like Bears Packers records from that era, and there was a pretty dominant stretch there from like 94 to 04, a decade where the Bears won about 2 games against the Packers. And I think if you had asked it like around that time, Brett Favre is, Aaron Rodgers level of persona non grata, but like you get to like 04, 05, 06, and with the Lovie Smith era, the Bears started winning a lot more of those matchups towards, that was really the end of the Brett Favre era and then the beginning of the Rodgers era that I think maybe softened that boogeyman feeling that Favre and the Packers had. Because just the whole team was so bad, right? I mean, you're losing everybody.
So I had 3 people on my list. That was number 1. Number 2, Zachary says also here in the chat, Cody Parkey. Banned. Not welcome back into the stadium. Not that he would ever want to. I mean, he's essentially Steve Bartman at this point. But Cody Parkey would be number 2 of who should be banned from Soldier Field forever.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one, but that's a pretty good one. I mean, Parkey's tricky because like he's someone that I want to just inherently feel bad for. Like he wasn't trying to miss, wasn't trying to be bad. But when you go on the Today Show afterwards and go on this big, like, I don't want to call it like a sympathy tour, but like it felt a little bit like things he didn't have to do to bring more attention to it that he did do. And I get it. You want to capitalize on whatever moment you can. Like I don't necessarily blame him as a human being for it, but like I lost a little bit of the grace and the sympathy from me there. But who's your number 3?
Okay, so we're doing who would we have banned from Soldier Field, our list right now. My number 3 is because he made the Bears trade away like one of my favorite football players of all time. I love Greg Olsen. So Mike Martz, not welcome back. It's all Mike Martz's fault that Greg Olsen was traded away. He should have been a Bear for life. He never should have been moved. He would have been awesome throughout all those years to stay here. Instead, he goes to have a great career in Carolina. And he's still, I can't believe how nice he is to the Bears still to this day. When he goes on any podcast or TV, like he still talks glowingly about the organization. And I'm like, good for you, man, because they threw you to the curb and they should not have done that. So Mike Martz was my other one.
I could imagine where like, hey, if they gave me the power to trade away this really good tight end and didn't hate me for it, like I still appreciate that franchise too. They let me come in as offensive coordinator and kind of run my own ship there and feel like, wow, I have some real power here from that position. I would have some nice warm feelings still lingering for that organization as well. Those are probably the best names. Those are better than names that I think I could come up with at this point. But I wonder if for Bears fans, especially if Mel Tucker, sort of the dismantler of the Lovie Smith defense and inheriting what was already a borderline playoff team. Like obviously like the Trestman thing is what it is, but at least Trestman's offense was good. Like that was one of the best Bears offenses we've seen in recent years. But Mel Tucker had no really value. What's the word? There's a not a lingering value there of like no redeeming value for that defense there as someone who, he's gone on to, well, he had his own scandals too at Michigan State, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And so speaking of scandalous defensive coordinators, the other name I'll throw in here of banned from Soldier Field, I would think Alan Williams probably. We just don't know what happened there, but like
it is one of the most fascinating things to me, like that from the reports that were happening on Twitter that were like wrong, but maybe right still. Like it's still not really clear. Like, did the FBI show up to House Hall? Like, it's still not really clear. That's still so strange that we never got like real answers on that whole day.
Yeah. And I understood like at first there was probably some like legal protections or whatever there that like, certain case was still under investigation or whatever. But I've been surprised that no one has been able to go back and uncover more real details there. Like I honestly, I tried. I was looking through court records. I was trying to find his addresses that were registered to his name in Virginia and other states to see if there had been anything that I could dig up, and I couldn't find any sort of record. So maybe everything, whatever it was involved, is no longer, was dropped or unsubstantiated or whatever it would be. But it says a lot that he has not landed as a coach anywhere since then. Not as a defensive backs coach or an assistant somewhere, even at the college level. Like He goes from NFL defensive coordinator to gone, and I guess good for him. I hope he's living a happy, healthy life somewhere else, doing his thing. I was also trying to think of like players that had gotten into some sort of difficult. Like I feel like I remember they had a defensive lineman who had a domestic violence arrest. Was it It was I can't remember what his in like the 2000s. It was a veteran like Ray something, and Jay Ratliff had an issue too. But there was a specific domestic violence defensive lineman. I will find it here quick as we're talking through this.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think I can't remember his name either, but the wide receiver who got caught with like a lot of drugs.
Ray McDonald in 2015, the Bears signed. They released him the moment he was arrested for domestic violence. Like pretty much any player that's in any kind of domestic violence or sexual assault or whatever it might be. Bears haven't had too many of those because we know McCaskies have always been very, very strict on like we are good church boys around here who don't get into legal trouble. But like, Ray McDonald was one of those that did not last long because of that, and they had a pretty strict policy putting back against that.
Honestly, George McCaskey might be on some people's list, or if you could ban anyone from Soldier Field, like put him at the top.
I was trying to think if there were any referees that specifically, because Bears fans get mad at referees in general, but like,
yes,
I don't know that there's an Ed Hockley or somebody that like specifically Bears fans got mad at for screwing them over. I don't think
whichever one threw the penalty against the linebacker who did the spinning wheel kick a couple years ago celebration.
Marsh, was it?
Yeah.
Yes. No. I would have thought whoever threw the flag on Johnny Knox's punt return touchdown that got called back by the Phantom holder, when Hester faked the catch and Johnny Knox had caught it on the other side of the field and ran it back, and there was a flag that was never substantiated in any way, shape, or form. I would not let that referee back into Soldier Field.
I think that's a good one too. I tried to think of like Vikings or Lions players, and like I was like, there's not really any. Like
Adrian Peterson. I mean,
yeah, but like he didn't like make me feel like Rodgers did because I was just I was in awe of Adrian Peterson, honestly, like what he was doing. Same thing with like Calvin Johnson. Like, and I was like, well, Peanut got the best of him sometimes. So like I didn't feel that bad about it.
I'll throw one more Packer in there. I would not let Clay Matthews into Soldier Field. I do not like Clay Matthews. I have never liked Clay Matthews and still don't like Clay Matthews. And honestly, like throw AJ Hawk in there too. Like I just some of those Packers defensive players from that era, and they just always rubbed me the wrong way that I just didn't like them.
AJ Hawk is a good one. I'll go ahead and just his I can't remember if it's his sister or his. No, I think it's his sister. She's also banned because I hated the jersey. I hated the Ohio State Notre Dame jersey that she had because she was engaged to Brady Quinn. That's not allowed. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Unless you are like Travis Kelce's mom and Jason Kelce's mom, you're not allowed to have a split jersey. Like you have to pick a side at all point in times between a team. You cannot go with one or the other. Are you alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good. Just choking a little bit over here.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up. That's our time anyways. So we'll be back with you guys. We'll have a show on Tuesday again next week. Our third member of the show will officially be joining us. At that point, we'll save the announcement for then, just in case. So we'll go to a three-person show starting next week, and then we'll be here as well after every single post-game show. So Tuesdays and post-game shows, we'll be with you right here for an hour long on the Bears Squad shows. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to hear on YouTube, plus wherever you get your podcasts on Apple and Spotify. For Lauren, I'm Joe. Talk to you next week.